Yeah, that's interesting.
O sea, mira,
la estoy leyendo a Victoria, estoy leyendo la ¿Qué tal como poeta? Eso me lo recomendó
como poeta, tiene un estudio sí, sí. Y bueno, y su estudio de Silva establece la conexión con Víctor Hugo, pero fuertísimo. Sí.
Yo me acuerdo que nunca fecha.
Marco conocía a Víctor Hugo al dedillo.
Es que no. Yo tengo poesía, yo busco las calles, busco donde existe la humanidad. Ahora que menciona, era toda la ciudad, la vista de París, como ustedes, de París, que es toda la pero
Exacto. Desde luego. ¿Cuánto me alegro de que estés aquí? ¿Cuánto me alegro de que estés aquí, que podamos hablar?
I am not working as a psychotherapist, but I am working using my psychology that I work in user experiences. So I have people understand different apps and how to connect with people on social media. Related, I
That's
know.
very important. That is actually very important these days. I mean, I'm
It's a funny journey. I know.
I'm taking my friends.
Yeah, it's, I know it's the whole thing. Parent feels parent control. It's the whole thing. So I've a lot of parents trying to parent in this with all the technology. It's interesting related to finding out.
Yeah.
We do have safety. But now I can work remotely in Durham, so I've been in the Bay Area for many years, and then now
Is your mother also there?
in Durham. Yeah.
The readers please come up, Juanito. The readers please come up to the table, the readers, thank you. We're going to confirm the order of meeting. I will take care of that.
I would like to know. Just, I'm sure
Second and third. Yeah.
I'm glad to be last.
Yeah. But then I would send
That's why I'm here.
No, I don't think so.
Whoever's speaking is like,
Okay, our clinic, I'm gonna call back.
Yeah.
Everybody has to look at
We just deferred that one.
the people who. Okay.
So the other thing that, I'm not on, I'm just introducing you.
Yeah.
And stuff. Yes.
Yeah, that's one.
I could come, maybe right after.
Whatever you want. Thank you, man.
Yeah, I'll give you a second.
Right.
¿Te gusta la comida? ¿Verdad que sí?
Sí, eso es sano, ¿no? Es sano.
Hi, everybody. How are you doing tonight?
Great.
Thank you so much for coming out for this reading from Mark's collected poems. Do you mind if I hold this up? I'm going to hand it right back to you, but this is it, Mark's collected poems. And these are all of his poems in one single volume. I'm just going to be up here a couple of times tonight. I'm Andrew Salters. First thing I'm doing right now is, second, I'll read, the brief biographical information about Mark inside of our book here. But before that, I'd just like to say, number one, thank you for being here. Number two, just a little bit about the project and how it got underway. Okay. Better?
That's it.
Okay,
There
great.
we go.
I'm going to be testing sound, of course, in a second when I get off stage, because there's a secondary microphone down here for the online video, which is what's running right now through this odd laptop setup. Tell no one, they'll always think it looked great and slick. Anyway, thank you again so much for being here. Let me tell you a little bit about this project before we begin. After Unicorn Press, the press that I edit for, had the great luck and high honor of publishing Mark's final book, Daybreak, which came out posthumously in 2024. I was in contact with Alan, and Alan, suggested, who do you know anybody, who might be interested in doing a collected volume of Mark's work? Which I thought, that's an excellent idea, of course, right? That's the, it's one of the greatest things that a publisher or any publisher can do to make sure that someone's work is available together in print. And, so I thought about it. I was asking around at, various friends and, writing colleagues, do you know of who I could get Alan in contact with at maybe like a university press, or, is there a way that we can get this project in motion, somewhere that's got the reach that I really wish this book would have. Eventually, through conversation, Alan was like, well, maybe you'd be interested. I'm like, well, of course I'd be interested. And I'll try to step up to be the publisher that this book needs. So I'm very thankful for Alan for not only suggesting the project, but bringing it to Unicorn Press, where I'm very glad to be the publisher of these excellent poems. Before I hand it off to Alan in a second, I just want to say a brief word of thanks to all of Mark's previous publishers for allowing this book to contain work that had been published with them. So that would be, for the book Our Lives Are Rivers, that would be the University Press of Florida. for any second now, his second full collection. That would be Main Street Rag Publishing in Charlotte, North Carolina. And that was also the publisher for Mark's third book, Timepieces. For chapbooks, there's Green Mango Collage from Birchbook Press, Shafts, which was published through a connection to the North Carolina Writers Network. Waiting Room, which was recognized and published from a small press down in Birmingham, Alabama, Red Mountain Review, and Splices, which was published by Finishing Line Press. There were also, poems published in the International Poetry Review, Blue Pitcher, Edge of the World, The Sun, Chattahoochee Review, Collecting Life, and The New Guard. So as the publisher of this book, I'm very thankful for their support of all of these poems appearing in print together. When you get to the book, these are words describing, very briefly, but I think succinctly, the man of the evening, Mark Smith-Soto, from whom in a moment we will be reading poems. Mark Smith-Soto, 1948 to 2023, was born in Washington, D.C., and lived in Costa Rica until the age of 10, when his father brought the family back to the city of his birth. He tasted and savored poetry from an early age in a bilingual family. He is the author of 4 full-length poetry collections and 3 award-winning chapbooks. His awards include a fellowship in creative writing from the National Endowment for the Arts. He won North Carolina Writers Network's Persephone competition for his chapbook Green Mango Collage, published in 2000, as well as its Randall Jarrell Harper Prince Poetry competition for the chapbook Shafts in 2001. Most recently, Mark received the 2023 Guy Owen Prize for his poem Segue, which I'll be reading later tonight. I'm going to hand this off in a moment to Alan. Let me first give you a sense of who you're going to be hearing from this evening. In a moment, Alan will be reading from his introduction to the book, which will include some poems. After that, we will hear from additional readers, Beth Adamore, Lynn Label, John Picard. Where are you? Yeah, there you are. Veronica Grossi. Then I'll come back again to read a couple of poems right before we hear from Keith Cushman. Thank you again for being here. And please greet, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry.
I just wanted to mention again that
Oh, I did, yes. Yeah.
sorry.
I know, it's okay. Thank you so much again for being here. And let's greet Alan Smith-Soto.
You read this one?
I'll read it up. Sorry, I'll read the order.
Thank you, Andrew, for that most kind introduction. Thank you to Skapernung Books for hosting this presentation. This volume of Mark Smith-Soto's collected poems would not have been possible without the constant support and work of its publisher, Andrew Salters of Unicorn Press. Andrew not only provided fundamental counsel for its completion, but contributed as well to transcriptions of 2 of the author's collections. His appreciation of Mark's poetry informs every page of this book. My thanks to Beth Adamore, Mark's wife, and John Picard, Mark's lifelong friend, for identifying and providing the poems not previously collected through some tedious library spade work, which I very much admire and appreciate. I am grateful more than I can say to our brother David Smith-Soto and our sister Anne Esquets for their constant support throughout the completion of this project. Mark Smith-Soto is my brother. And it also happens that he is an extraordinary poet. Working on this volume has been a great joy, not without its pangs of deep sorrow, but its fundamental temper has been of devotion and amazement. Amazement at the beauty and wisdom of these words. I have been enriched by Mark's poetic voice. I feel I am a better man, a better human, a life in the company of a world made more dear to me. Let us briefly peruse this book a bit together. As I reread his poems, I was at times back again in our family days, gone of course, but present here for as long as readers find my brother's poems and see something familiar, strangely familiar, or familiarly strange in their own life. The overriding theme of my poetry is time, he said, smiling in a public reading celebrating the life and works of his undergraduate creative writing professor, Rod Jelena. And memory is nothing if not time. In fact, our very self. We are back in a moment of light and taken to a present where death is. For example, in the poem Isabel Soto Borbón, which we'll have the pleasure of hearing in Beth's reading later tonight. Mark's poetry explores even very small matters that resonate broadly. As he says in So You Want to Be a Poet, from Daybreak, thereby to experience the thrill of honoring with its rightful name some humble thing. In this case, a crack in the asphalt. Aria da capo. Can those be primroses traveling the cement that winter cracked from one side of the driveway to the other? 2, 3, 4 lilac-tinted blooms sprouting from the jagged stretch of shallow dirt. As yet spared by random traffic and blind shoes, not just surviving, in fact, but lavish in well-being, awash with the sun and dots of rainbow dew, twisting this way and that in static dance, faces twisting up as if to say, you see, you misguided being, who needs kingdoms galore? Who needs shoes or love? See us teeter here, no hands. Along the dirt-filled crack like kids on the loose, tilting in the bloom of an April morning, death a lifetime of hours away for any rogue primrose traveling the cement. From Daybreak. Or a backyard at dusk where Chico, his dog for many years, has run out, having heard a sound, and stands simply in darkness. Night watch. Chico whines, no reason why. Just now walked, dinner gobbled, head and ears well scratched, and yet he whines, looking up at me as if confused at my just sitting here, typing away, while darkness is stalking the backyard. How can I be so blind, he wants to know. How sad, how tragic, how I won't listen before it is too late. His whines are refugees from a brain where time and loss have small dominion, but where the tyranny of now is absolute. I get up and throw open the kitchen door, and he disappears down the cement steps, barking deeper and darker than I remember. I follow to find him perfectly still in the empty yard, the two of us in the twilight, standing guard. The time of love. lives in these poems, as in this encounter of gazes from his last book, Daybreak. Mark gave me many gifts. He's given many of us many gifts. One of them is lessons in botany. I've learned words for plants and flowers, for example, one called Naked Lady, which makes its presence in this poem. There you are. I do feel somehow exiled here, outside the frame. Just what is it about a woman at an open window seen from the side? An opalescent half-light on her hands holding the curtains apart, head tilted, questioning. Maybe her gaze has stranded on that naked lady half hidden by the shed, a blossom she knows she never planted. Her wondering, these small random gifts, why do they touch one so? But of course, I can't begin to guess her mind. It's me trespassing here. I should go before she sees me, leave her to her thoughts. Oh, there you are, amore. Come look at this. Friendship, love, wonderfully temporal, are the stuff of these poems. And of course, beauty could not be without its gift of time, which takes us by the hand to death. As we have seen, not as the end of beauty and life, for that matter, but as their necessary edge, contour, their very profile. Yes, death, always a companion from his first book, Our Lives, Our Rivers, whose title is taken from a line of the 15th century masterpiece by Jorge Manrique that ends, that go on to the sea that is death. Death made itself at ease in later days in Mark's poems and was called by name. Segue. Now that you mention it, death. The cherry outside the kitchen in full bloom, the novel I left open on my bed, the stitch in my side riding a rib, with a small hole at the center of my retina where nothing registers at all, the rip in the screen letting in a gnat adrift on the whiff of Daphne blooming along the broken driveway, the sudden abandon of your laugh, me forgetting what I was going to say, closing my eyes, holding my breath. And now that you mention it, death. If I may share an appreciation of Mark's poetry, no, of the man himself, then they seem contradictory. There was an Epicurean temper to Mark and a Stoic aplomb as well. And he is not alone, as Pierre Hadot reminds us, quote, to use the Stoic mode and the Epicurean model successively or alternatively was a way of achieving a certain balance in life. And indeed, both schools invited their companions to completely inhabit, one might say, the fleeting presence of the world, and thereby, paradoxically, its range. May you find joy, solace, and companionship in this poetry, Mark's privileged travel companion. Let us say farewell for now with the poet's words, a passage from To One Inspecting My Poems from Timepieces. You there outside, thumbing through my book. Come in a while and sip a beer. We'll play Johnny and Dylan on cheap CDs and tell each other jokes about a bungled world, unstitching like a baseball in the rain. The day was hot and long. We were both exhausted by the work we left undone. You might well ask what wares I have to offer. A wary shopper wanting a good read. Red syllables I stole in Zanzibar. Or the open sesame to a bright cave where long-eyed genies curl in dusty lamps and wait for lust to rub them the right way? Or do I peddle God's most secret name? I know the irony lies heavy on the tongue. There's no one buys that magic anymore. The uncertain spell that spins a singing line to cast a fly for meaning that won't bite, but almost pulls the sun out of the water. But no, I won't say no one, damn it, if you will still shell out a 20 for my song. Reader, I'm glad you're here. Company sweeter than a sister's or a brother's. Your mind on my mind, your eye to my eye. I feared you were a vanished breed, a myth that wordsmiths must revere or simply die for lack of any reason to flail on. Here, have another. Stay a while with me. Thank you. And now we have the pleasure of hearing Mark's poems. Beth.
As they say, a hard act to follow. Thank you all for being here. And thanks to Alan Sito for his incredible, loving work for Mark's poetry, creating this beautiful book. And Andrew Shalters for all the work that he did for Mark's poems. We're lucky such a wonderful publisher has chosen to put all of his work together in this extraordinary book of all of Mark's work, almost. I'm reading a poem right now that I just think is wonderful. And I think the only thing I could come up with to say about it is that it's charming, funny, and has great pathos. It's called Smith-Soto Bourbon. There's one word in it, confiteros, which means rascal in Costa Rica. My fat Aunt Isabel, big body bulging in the neighbor's old tuxedo and a neatly drawn mustache, toddled through the room to make us laugh. How pigeon-toed she danced. How her clever, blue, green, strange, beautiful eyes rolled. She was so heavy, the day parted when she passed. And when we stepped quick and happy behind her, snapping our fingers like castanets, she could be mean. Her pinches were something. And her cry of, confiteros, I'll show you, then fly or be shown. But who cared? She appeared and boredom scurried to its hole. My mother's asthma was a thing of the past. And even our father laughed once. Yes, that was the day she discovered Bill Haley and the Comets, the latest spin from the pagan dance-mad USA. She sailed into our house and blew the windows away. It was in that country of our childhood, in that house by a bridge, still stomped by oxen, in that long living room brightened by Zulema the maid, that Bill Haley tore out of black plastic. And how fat Aunt Isabel rocked, with the music banging a wonderful soreness in the air, How we rocked with her. She was the ball down the long hall. We were the pins bounced off the wall. She was Jupiter and we were her moons. She was the band and we were the music that she made. Was it from her we learned life could be had? It was from her we learned life could be had. And now, which is why I write these words that can't begin to remember her, in a small hospital of a small country, fatter than ever with dropsy and gift candy from friends. My Aunt Isabel dies in a bed, and how I hope it's not a narrow bed, and how I hope her nurses are not little nurses, and how I hope from so many miles and years away that the sheets that hold her may stretch over her huge and gentle, free as sails. This next poem I'm going to read is called Do I Stink? And I love it because, as you can tell already, it's in everyday language and in his everyday tone, deep truths are brought to the front, and the way Mark could do. Do I stink? Roscoe wants to know, his voice choked, his two-toned fingers trembling for cheap gin. Can you smell it on me? Roscoe is a drunken boat, pitching down the corridors of Flow Lab, Inc. He and I shoot monkey virus into test tubes and sweet flame over the tops before we screw them shut. Tight, not too tight. They shatter easily. And if you cut yourself, well, good luck fighting back from monkey flu. Roscoe's black and doesn't like it. He is short and wall-eyed and fat. He writes nature poems on brown paper and cowboy stories for me to read. Do they stink? He wants to know. You can tell me. But the boss is glaring at us through the glass partition, his blanched oval face fluorescent, his eyes pinwheels of impatience. It's just a summer job for me, but Roscoe's in it for life. This gig's my last chance, man, he tells me every day, and every day I shake my head. Can't smell a thing, man. Breathing through my mouth so as not to offend with a reflex grimace. And he looks at me straight, maybe waiting to see me breathe, and then looks away. You got a future ahead of you, kid. Remember me someday when you're far from this zoo and free. Outside the windowless brick of Flow Laboratories, the sun rushed out like a lion among the clouds. Not my image, that, but Roscoe, the poet's, who was fired that August as I went off to class. Thank you very much.
I'm Lynn LaBelle, and I'm going to read two poems. Timex, which is about a wristwatch that was gifted to Mark, and a chess poem entitled Mate, are from Mark's 2003 published collection, Our Lives Are Rivers. These two poems are meditations upon his father. That's a good word for much of Mark's poetry, meditations. If the reader resonates, he or she may walk into remembrances of their own fathers. Mark's poems are an opening door beckoning. So now, a few words about the wristwatch poem Timex. 2 weeks before his death, Mark gave me this copy of Our Lives Are Rivers. He was just sitting on the sun porch sofa, and arm extended, he handed it to me. He had inscribed it. He said he wanted me to have it. I felt the warm love of the gift. It was almost impossible not to weep. Timex. 2 weeks before his death at 50, and 2 weeks after his birthday at the beach, my father gave me his watch, snapped it off his large freckled wrist, and handed it over without ceremony, which was like him. But young as I was, I felt the warm weight of the gift. He was just sitting on the bed and said, I want you to have this. No other word. No other word of explanation. Shoulders hunched in the brown bathrobe, as always falling open. Chest full of gray hair. Swell of belly. Hand extended like an ape's arm. An ape's palm down, holding the silver-banded, numberless face. Almost impossible to read, especially in the bedroom shadow. And now a few words about the chess poem, Mate. Mark occasionally encouraged me to work at my chess. Over the years, we played a few lopsided games. In Mate, Mark looks back to an event that spawned two side-by-side memories that ultimately became the poem. When Mark was 14, he played Bobby Fischer, who was almost 20. This was in the old days, and Mark's father watched. Mate. I beat Bobby Fischer. He was playing 60 people at the time, at the same time, and I was 14, and he was almost 20. This was before he pulled out the metal fillings in his molars, so the communists could not control his brain, or maybe it was the Jews. He went from board to board, quickly handsome and serious, his fingers long and strong. A bishop's gambit, I declined and dug in hard. He piled his rooks around my cornered king. I pushed the pawn, and he let it go too far. His sacrifice fell just one move short. He grinned and signed my sheet. This was in the old days. His teeth looked strong. Not bad. my father said on the way home.
Wow.
I'm reading two short poems. The first one Mark wrote not long after 9/11. It's called Manhattan Buddha. Straight-backed, seated on the window ledge, he looks down at traffic pebbling the street 90 floors below. The hair at the back of his neck about to catch, nothing but morning air under his dangled feet. The flames behind him make the sound of waves trying to clutch the sand they just can't hold, the way they never could. He sees it all and smiles. There is no humbug in him, in his oblique worship of the horizon, the seagulls, the faithful fairies dragging like dumped flies across the water. His face alert, as if he watched God watching, he opens his arms and falls, leaving me here, inside, clinging to myself, the walls on fire. This other poem, Mark worked on for years, if not decades. And I heard him read many versions of it over the years. And he finally nailed it. It's called Rust. Somewhere out of all proportion, under the belly of a stone, or in the slimy innards of a pipe, or in the slow exertions of pylon and beam, it bides its time. It battens on the quiddity of things. Van Gogh surprised it, humming in his ear, sweet talker in the delicate turnings of the chambers. But far from the sheer incision, it flourished till it burst into a sunflower. No moist, warm place, whether clean and fresh at first, whether chaste as wheat, resists the charm that issues from the air and gently moves to trace itself upon the thing it loves.
Well, it's really an honor to be here. I don't have words about this marvelous poetry of Mark. And it comes to me the humility that was in him. At the same time, the visionary, as a visionary and about the poet that had the penetration of the sacred in the moment, in the passing moment, in the interstices, in the small places of everyday life, in the gestures, coming from a heart full of love and compassion and generosity. So I hope he's with us, where he in heaven and accompanying us. I have not enough words to express to you how I miss him. And again, there's not much more to say about his marvelous gift of the music that he, through the music of the poem, his sensuality in cherishing the small things in our lives and the persons that were surrounding him and embracing him, and he embraced back. So I'm going to read Cafe of Mirrors. Here it is again, one of those moments when human beings seem beautiful to me, even their flaws touching, a mouth too large on that woman, a bald spot on a boy named Roberto. My perceiving renders them tender. I know that they are not so, but a knowledge within that knowledge argues for them. Gauzes each dot or blot with a kind of love, and I myself am bettered by this flare of neon from my head, lighting the mirror so that I am flattered into a dream. Though I catch at the next table a man just staring around, his goatee diving off his chin into the rest of our lives. The transcendence in the moment that he could glimpse with his privileged soul. Flashback. The sun dusting the window and the dying sound of a guitar get crossed in the blaze of a fan to blow over me a breeze 40 years old. A memory like a hollow in the yellow heat, when wasps swarming on a mango pit spoke of pleasure in the endless morning. And grandfather, always darker than I am now, pulled his bright Panama down his eyebrows, like layer cloud above the storm. Alajuela, white and black with sun, now returns, the pressure of his fingers on my hand, the loop both ways on the edge of the street that grows off into the blue of the mountains. Why bother to cross? Why not stay put for a while, making sure nothing is about to happen? Careful glance suspended in the yellow heat. Grandmother's picking berries in the backyard. She's safe there with the tiny ants at her feet. A dragonfly poised on the patio well. No, there's no need to hurry today because I am visiting. Because in a house nearby, a guitar is singing and it's not known yet. Over there's a valley where the buildings end and a lake so distant it might be a tear. And right on the corner where we have stopped, the English lady's sweet shop, full of light. But we know we can't stay, can we? Held here in the hug of the yellow heat, two hearts striped by the gold strings of a guitar. Don't bother saying so anymore. Don't bother playing grown up. We know we're not allowed when the English lady keeps her trays of ice cream, each cube stuck with a single toothpick. Come away, fast boy, since you can linger under the shuttering halo of her ceiling fan, since even she knows how to say adios. And grandfather is already clearing his throat to call out your name for the last time. Thank you.
Hello again, everyone. So I'm popping back in because I forgot to put myself in the reading order before we got all organized. We have one reader after me, which is Keith Cushman. Thank you so much for your presence this evening in reading these poems. I decided to make my selections on the basis of a couple of experiences with Mark. I think that, and I never told Mark this, I think that I saw Mark for the first time when I was an MFA graduate student in 2006. I was trying to do some writing at the Starbucks cafe over in the Friendly Center. And just like from across that space, I saw, I saw this like thoughtful, man with some books and just on his own mission to sit down and do some thinking or writing or reading with some coffee. It was, of course, maybe 5 years after that that I got the opportunity to work with Mark on Berkeley Prelude, which Unicorn Press published in 2012. Berkeley Prelude was the first book I ever got to work on as somebody involved in publishing. It was, of course, my introduction to Alan Brilliant, Unicorn Press, but also my first introduction really to Mark Smith-Soto. And I guess, it would be proper in some sense to read a poem, the first one from that chapbook. The title gives you a sense of when Mark is thinking about in terms of when the poem takes place, September 1970, which I guess, that would make him, in the setting of this poem, about the same age I was when I first saw him from across a coffee shop. The motley spectacle. The sun, it was the sun that promised to make him new, to ripen his green heart and turn it as sweet and flowing as a honeycomb. And maybe the minty morning wind whipping off the bay that made him feel eucalyptus was a light that could be swallowed. Day after day he gulped the sting from the air and the incense of pot and must that laced the laughter of strangers in the street and the honeymoon dankness of the movie theaters. And soon he was no longer shaving, had let grow wild the thickness of his hair. On his own at last, as far from Bethesda as he could get on a 4-year fellowship and the Greyhound bus, he was now free to be himself. And he intended to do just what he wanted, as soon as he found out what that might be. But if he didn't know what he wanted it much. So much that when he got out of bed and yawned and stretched full out, he felt that thorns would tear out the muscle of his arms, that horns would rise right through his scalp to stab the air. He cruised down crazy quilted telegraph like a ghost, no one remarked, that no one saw or felt, and he played chess with bald men in the park while pigeons kibitzed and lean bodies clad in paisley swatches and old shoes practiced the classic role of passers-by. They brushed around him, bright leaves of a revolving door, and sometimes he would follow one of them like a hunter on the scent, feeling himself invisible, and he would see how simply tomatoes could be bought, friends greeted with a laugh and a hug, and the bicycle mounted and pedaled out of sight. This was life then. Even in Berkeley, nothing more or less than a world shiny with ordinariness, men and women giving themselves to the weather with the loud generosity of toads. He didn't feel he was one of them at all, caught up completely, yet lost inside himself. He watched them with an alien fascination, never imagining that maybe for them too, the days pounded by, that hidden behind their own sheets of plexiglass, they too might be watching him, the curious boy man peering from behind a row of paperbacks at Moe's. No, they didn't really exist for him. He alone lived fully in the world. He alone yearned for impossible things. He alone understood the ironies. And that was his satisfaction those first weeks, to feed on the bitterness of his heart and savor his thirst under the unsquinting sun of that western heaven, that air caressed by the sigh of eucalyptus. And how strange that the perfume of that childish yearning still lies in ambush after 30 years, that my body recalls the edge of an aloneness suffered to the point of sex, feels still fresh, the genital warmth coming off the green bay, like a spell, holding the brimming cup just out of reach, bidding me, drink, drink, drink. The other poem I'd like to share is one that my students really like. Sometimes I get the chance to share some of Mark's poetry along with other poems and in classes that I get to teach over at UNCG. And so in the context of a publishing class, we were looking at this poem. Students were, just offering observations about it. And when I was reviewing them one day, of course, their comments on the poems, not having had a chance to meet Mark, always had me looking fresh at the poems themselves and what they're doing for these fresh readers. And it's the last line of this poem that a student responded to with the slang, the student was like, straight bars. which, if I could act as a youth interpreter for a moment, apparently that means that it's righteous music. It's good stuff. And I agree. Gemini. No sure way of knowing which side of midnight I was born. Really? Memorial Day. A time of mourning. The Day of the Dead. Never. My mother crossed herself. No way. As good a day as any, Father trotted out his reasons. But she had already altered the certificate, not aware that at the bottom the funeral date once again was entered. The fork-tongued document now speaking for the messy trio we made. The Jew Yankee, tall, logical, versus the short, magical Costa Rican, and me, the chubby, cross-eyed kid between, half lawyer, half poet, half spick, half gringo. So many halves to make a man somehow. Thank you.
I'm going to read two short poems. The first is the title poem from an award-winning chapbook by Mark. Everybody likes Mark's poems about his boyhood in Costa Rica. This one is called Green Mango Collage. Sharp slices with lime juice and salt, puckery tears popping up in our eyes, dragonflies and cold gold toads and coral in the snaky fields, white-limbed Zulema, a statue in the shadows of her room, turning alive to scold us away, but laughing. Her thrown shoe, meant to miss, still is flying toward us. David, duck, duck, Alan, duck, Anita, not yet born, into the evergreen weather. Grandfather at his solitaire, whistling a fado. Aida in the kitchen, poking the pressure cooker with a long broom. It's going to pop, it's going to pop. But it never will, because she left her husband on the third day, and because the neighbor brought a chicken with its neck twisted on its shoulder, and the long dinner was rich with scandal, the scent of green fruit, the rice with almost no hard grains in it, the coins of plantain growing on the plate. My second poem is from Timepieces. It's one of Mark's wonderful hundreds of sonnets. It's a very quiet poem about a life-changing moment. There are two Portuguese words in it, vinho verde, which means green wine. We call it white wine. Putting cancer in a poem. You have to be careful how you do it. The first line for sure is no place. Even the second or third might let it spring leaks and streak everything beneath. No, first you need to let the light flap in from the uncurtained window. Catch the deep breath off the gardenia bloom doing the backstroke in its brandy snifter. As the doctor on the phone says what he has to say, and your wife and friend wait with wine glasses and the porch fan on, chatting and looking for you to come back with the hors d'oeuvres, the vinho verde, the poem of your life with a new name.
Thank you so much, everyone, again, for coming in and enjoying this time with us and Mark's poetry. Let me thank again our readers. I may not remember you all in order, but I will remember you all from memory. Len Label, Veronica Gracie, Krishna, Beth Atmore, John Picard, Alan Smith-Soto, of course. Thank you so much, everyone. And please stick around and hang out. There are copies of the book, of course, available at the front. And for the readers, I will be bringing out in a moment hardcover copies for you. And thanks.
Wow.
So please don't leave. Thank you again, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you also, everyone, for joining us here at the reading. This will be the end of the live stream. Thank you again.
Yeah.